Well, welcome back to the Solo Gamers Club. We're continuing with our playthrough of Eldritch Horror, and we're opposing Yig, the Father of Serpents. If we examine Yig's Mythos deck, Stage 1, we notice that there's one green, two yellow, and one blue cards in that first stage. Now, we've already burned the rumor card and one of the yellows, so that means that we've got a 50-50 chance of it being a green or yellow card, which will be, if it's a yellow, it'll be a reckoning event. And the reckoning event is going to set off that ghostly chanting card that is an ongoing rumor. And every time that happens, our investigators are going to have to impair their highest skill, and that is going to wreak havoc with us, so we need to solve that as soon as possible. So what I'm going to end up doing is, I think our lead investigator is Monterey Jack. He currently has 3 clue tokens. So I'm going to try to get him to Bombay, India. He has a ship ticket, so we'd be able to move through Cape Town, South Africa, arrive in Bombay, which would be one space away from the Himalayas, which is where we need to solve that rumor by getting 4 clue tokens, one for each of the investigators. He's short 1 clue token. So rather than wasting time trying to get to the heart of Africa, which would be the closest clue token that he could get to, we'll get him to the city of Bombay, and then I'm going to have him conduct a gain assets action, and hopefully he could get the rumor mill card, which would, when you gain this card, immediately gain 1 clue. That would be his 4th clue then. So I think that's what we're going to do for this first turn. Incidentally, while I was doing the post-editing on the first video, I noticed that in 2 instances, I did not take advantage of Daryl Simmons's passive ability, which gets him an extra die when resolving a test during a location encounter while he's in a city location. So that ended up costing us. I ended up burning some tokens that I might not have needed to do. So I'm going to have to make sure I remember to do that. That's one thing with this game, is there's a lot of little finicky things happening, and you've got to keep that in your forefront of your mind while you're playing, so you don't lose advantages that you're entitled to. All right, so we're going to begin our actions phase with our lead investigator, Monterey Jack. He's going to conduct a move action, and he's going to move from Dakar to Cape Town, South Africa. And while in Cape Town, he's going to spend his ship ticket, and that will allow him to continue to move to Bombay. And he's done that all in 1 move action, so he's in Bombay now, and his second action is going to be a acquire assets action. He's going to be able to test his influence, and he can gain assets from the reserve equal to the number of successes he has. So we'll make that roll. He has an influence of 2. He'll be rolling 2 dice. And unfortunately, Monterey rolled a 3 and a 3, so he has no successes. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to burn one of he has 1 focus token, and that will allow us to re-roll one of those dice. And unfortunately, he rolled a 1, so we have no successes. He's still short 1 clue token to be able to take care of that rumor. So that's going to end Monterey Jack's actions phase, and we'll move on to Roland Banks. Okay, Roland is in Siberia right now, and I have one option I can do. And I think what we're going to do is I can prepare for travel, and he could earn a rail ticket. Then we would travel from Siberia to Shanghai, burning the rail ticket, and then moving on to Monterey Jack's location in Bombay. And then while there, he would be able to exchange items and as an action. Now that, unfortunately, that is going to have to take another turn to do that, a trade action, but we could do that the next turn at least. So I think what we would do is just readjust possibly our first investigator token, if need be, to accomplish that. So we'll start out with Roland Banks. He is going to prepare for travel, gaining a rail ticket. His second action is going to be a move action from Siberia to Shanghai using the rail line. And unfortunately, there's a cultist there. I forgot about that. So he would have to battle that cultist. And he has to beat that thing in order to continue. That's actually a good question. Can you continue on by using a rail ticket if you have to pause to fight the cultist? And actually that will not be a problem because that combat would only occur during the encounter phase. So that will not interfere with Roland traveling through Shanghai. So we're going to have him spend his rail ticket there. He'll spend the rail ticket and continue moving on to Bombay with Monterey Jack. And that's going to complete Roland's turn. We'll move on to Daryl Simmons. He's in Batavia, Dutch East Indies. And we'll begin with Daryl's action phase. He's going to do a component action and use his action on his card. It says look at the top 5 cards of the asset deck, put them back in any order, and then discard any number of cards from the reserve. So that's what we'll do. And those 5 cards reveal one weapon. It's an axe that's +2 to combat. And also says you may spend 2 sanity to re-roll any number of dice when resolving a strength test during a combat encounter. So that could be very useful. We'll put that at the top. We have a couple of allies, Arcane Assistant and Lodge Disciple, an Otherworld Codex, a tome, and another tome, a Mystic tome. So we're going to rearrange those cards in order and put them back into the deck, and then we'll take a look at our reserve. And that's our current number of cards in the reserve. I think we're going to get rid of the Arcane Scholar, and I think that'll be it. We'll just get rid of the Arcane Scholar, and we're going to get a replacement card for that. That card is replaced with that weapon, the axe. So I think what we're going to do now is have Daryl, for his second action, he's going to attempt to acquire assets. And his influence currently right now is a 2. He's going to gain +1 for being in a city with his passive ability. He also has a practiced ability. Once per round, you may roll 1 additional die and re-roll 1 die when resolving a test. If we fail, we have to flip the card, though. So that's going to give us a total influence of 2, +1 for his passive ability. That's 3 dice, and then +1 die for the practiced. And we have 1 re-roll available, so we'll be rolling 4 dice. Daryl has 1 success. We're going to end up using that re-roll ability from the practiced, and that will re-roll that number 1 die and see what we get. And that's unfortunately a roll of a 2. So we have 1 success, and I think Daryl will use that. The only thing he could purchase would be that rumor mill card, which would gain him the clue. Yeah, I suppose he'll do that because we're going to end up getting that the clue token for Monterey Jack from Roland Banks in Bombay, so that won't be a problem. So he'll spend his 1 success, and he's going to gain that rumor mill card, which will get him a clue. And then we're going to discard that, and that will be replaced with another card. So he gains the clue, and it's replaced with a Lodge Disciple. That's kind of expensive. That costs 4 successes to acquire. That concludes Daryl Simmons' action. We'll move on to Hank Sampson. He's up in Siberia. Okay, Hank Sampson is in Siberia, and well, I was thinking about having him start the combat against that winged serpent in Tokyo. He does have the sledgehammer, which would gain +2 strength during a combat encounter. That would give him a total of 5 dice. He had 4 strength, but his strength was impaired due to that rumor card. Yeah, I don't think 5 dice would be enough. The odds on us getting 4 out of 5 successes would be not too good. So I think we might hold off on that. I think what I will do is have Hank Sampson travel to Shanghai, and he's going to combat that cultist. and that would help us because if another cultist would appear at the location of the expedition, the doom track is going to drop. So we're going to conduct a travel action for Hank Sampson. He's going to take the rail line from Siberia to Shanghai. So he arrives in Shanghai, and I think what we'll do is I'll have Hank conduct a focus action that'll give him his second focus token, and that is going to conclude the action phase for the investigators. We'll move on to the encounter phase. Our lead investigator is Monterey Jack. He is in Bombay at Space 17, and he's going to conduct a location adventure, a city location adventure. So we're going to draw a card from the generic encounters deck. And the card reads, you try to convince a notorious grifter to teach you some tricks. Test influence. Okay, Monterey Jack's influence is 2, so we'll be able to roll 2 dice. Monterey rolls a success. He has a 6, so we'll continue reading. It says here, if you pass, he takes a liking to you and shows you how to deceive and avoid being deceived. Improve observation. Okay, that's great. So that is going to improve Monterey Jack's observation from 3 to 4. And that concludes Monterey Jack's encounter phase. We'll move on to Roland Banks. He's also in Bombay, India. Roland is also going to conduct a location adventure, and he's going to use the generic city deck to resolve it. And the card reads, the shop is robbed while you are browsing. You attempt to fend off the thieves. Test strength. Okay, Roland Banks' strength right now is at a 2, plus 1 for an improvement. And I'll see if he's got any other cards that would help him. No, the Mauser only helps during a combat encounter. This is just a strength test. So he has a total strength of 3. So he'll be able to roll 3 dice for the test. He has 1 focus token if he needs it. And we got a success for Roland. He rolled a 6. We'll continue reading. If you pass, the store owner is very gracious. Gain 1 item asset from the reserve or 1 random item asset from the deck. Okay, well, I think what we're going to do is we're going to have Roland take the axe. That gains him, the axe would give him a +2 to combat during combat encounters. And that's the same as his Mauser, but it does allow him to spend 2 sanity to re-roll any number of dice when resolving a strength test during combat. So I think we'll have him do that. He's going to take that axe item, we'll add that to his tableau, and that's going to conclude Roland's turn. We'll move on to Daryl Simmons. He's in Batavia, Dutch East Indies. And incidentally, that after we took the axe, it was replaced by a mystic tome in the reserve. And Daryl Simmons is in a city space. He is going to conduct a location encounter using the generic deck as well. And the card reads, the police ask for your help investigating a series of ritual killings. The grisly crime scenes threaten to overwhelm you with chills and nausea. Test will. Okay, Daryl Simmons has a willpower of 3. Now he is in a city location, so his passive ability would kick in. He'd be able to roll an extra die during a location encounter. And he also has the markings of Isis, which gains an extra die as well. So he'll be rolling a total of 5 dice for the test. Daryl rolls 2 successes. He has 2 5s. We'll continue reading. It says, if you pass, you manage to examine the scene and find significant information. Spawn 1 clue. Okay, so we're going to spawn a clue. The clue will appear in London, so we'll place that clue token in London. That is going to conclude Daryl Simmons' encounters phase, and we'll move on to Hank Sampson. Okay, Hank Sampson is in Shanghai, and as there is an enemy token there, he's going to have to take a combat encounter. So we're going to set up a combat encounter for Hank Sampson against the cultists. Now Hank has a passive ability that says you do not resolve the will test during a combat encounter unless you lose health from the strength test. So we don't have to do that will test that would normally be done when combating the cultists. So we're going to move on right to the combat section. We know that the cultists have a strength -1. Right now we have Hank Sampson at a 4. He's been, his ability has been degraded by 1, so he's at 3. He's going to use the sledgehammer. That'll gain +2, so he's at 5. So that'll put him at a total of 4 dice. 4 for his combat ability, -1 for the impairment, +2 for the sledgehammer, and -1 for the cultist's ability. So we'll be rolling 4 dice for the encounter. And Hank Sampson has 2 successes, which is great because that means that will nullify the 2 damage points that the cultists would have. He'll take no damage, and we will remove the cultist from the board. It had only a toughness of 1, so that was great for Hank Sampson. He did a good job. That cultist is returned to Yig's board because he has to have 6 cultist monsters set aside at all times unless they're on the board. So that was great for Hank Sampson. Now that there are no monsters remaining on his space, he is able to take an action where he's at. Hank has an option of a location encounter in Shanghai, a general city encounter in Shanghai, or the expedition encounter. And I think Hank is going to take a general city encounter in Shanghai. Shanghai's normal ability there is to improve lore, which really wouldn't help Hank too much. So I think we'll have him do a general encounter there. I could take the expedition encounter, but I'd like to save that for Monterey Jack. He's close to that, and he gets that benefit of gaining a relic, unique asset, after concluding a expedition encounter. So I think we'll go to general encounter for Hank Sampson in Shanghai. And the encounter reads, "A flood has destroyed the library. You look through the sludge for valuable items. Test observation." Okay, Hank Sampson has an observation of 3, and he has an improvement there, so he'll be rolling a total of 4 dice for his test. Hank rolls 1 6, so he has a success. We'll continue reading. It says, "If you pass, you make an important find, gain 1 tome unique asset and 1 spell." All right, let's draw the spell. The spell is revealed to be a glamour spell called Shroud of Shadow. During the encounter phase, you may choose an encounter as if there are no monsters on your space. However, during a reckoning phase, he's going to have to test lore -1 and flip the card. All right, so we will add that to his tableau, and then we're still entitled to a tome unique asset. We'll get that. And that card's revealed to be a Mythos Codex item tome. As an action, you must muster the courage to look upon the secrets of the universe. You would test your will, and if you pass, the pages contain knowledge your mind can hardly fathom. Flip the card. All right, so that's good. We'll add those items to Hank Sampson's card. That will conclude the encounter phase. We'll move on to the Mythos phase. And the card is revealed to be a yellow card called Shattered Magic. We begin by advancing the Omen track. That'll move the Omen track from the green comet to the blue star pattern. And we have 1 gate in Buenos Aires that is a blue gate that is going to advance the Doom track from 13 down to 12. The current gate on the stack that's revealed is San Francisco. That's a green gate, so there will be no extra trouble from that from our prelude card. And the next step in the resolving that card is a reckoning phase. And we begin the resolution of the reckoning phase by resolving any monsters with reckoning effects. There is one. It's a firebug located in Buenos Aires, and it says roll a die. On a 1 or 2, advance the Doom by 1. And unfortunately, we roll a 1, so that's going to advance the Doom now. It'll be from 12 down to 11. And the next is to resolve the reckoning effect of the Ancient Old One, and Yig has one. It's spawn one cultist monster on the active expedition space. So a cultist is going to appear back in Shanghai. Now, if Hank had not taken that cultist out, there would have been more than one cultist there, and that would have advanced the doom by 1 for that. So we did a good job on clearing that out. We'll place a cultist in Shanghai where the expedition is. And now we have to check for active Mythos cards, and there is one, and that's that Dastardly Ghostly Chanting card. And that card reads, each investigator impairs his highest skill, then discard 1 Eldritch token from the card. All right, that'll move the Eldritch tokens down from 4 to 3 on the card. And then we're going to have to impair the highest skill of each of the investigators. We'll begin with the lead investigator, and his highest skill right now is his observation. He has a 3+1 improvement. So he's going to lose that improvement token, and that is going to bring him down to a 3. Next is Roland Banks. He's tied for value of the observation, combat, or will. So I think what we'll do is we will degrade his observation, and that will increase that from -1 to -2. So we flip that token to the -2 side, and incidentally, that's as most as a skill can be degraded is by 2. Daryl Simmons has a influence of 3, observation 3, and will of 3. I think what we'll do there is we will further degrade his observation, and we'll move that from 4 -1 to 4 -2. So we'll flip that to a -2. And finally, Hank Sampson, his highest value is his observation at 4. So we're going to get rid of his improvement token, and that'll bring him down to a 3. And that's going to complete that part of the reckoning effects. There's one left, and we have to do the individual possessions and conditions of the players. Monterey Jack has one unique asset with a reckoning effect, and that says the alignment of the stars is right, flip the card. And that reads, Stone Calendar. The starlight illuminates certain reflective materials embedded within the calendar, revealing a glowing message in a long-forgotten language. Spend 1 clue or test lore -1. Well, we're going to do the lore -1 test. That would be rolling 1 die for him. He rolled a 3, so that's a failure. There is no detriment for failing. If he would have been successful, he would have gained a talent condition. So the card gets flipped back to its main side. Roland Banks has 1 card with a reckoning effect, and that's the Cursed Sphere. It says roll a die on a 1 or 2, gain a cursed condition. Roland rolled a 3, so we're good with that card. We'll move on to Daryl Simmons. Daryl has 1 card, that's the Markings of Isis spell, and it says during a reckoning, test lore -1 and flip the card. Well, unfortunately, Daryl has a lore of 1, so he'll be down to his minimum of 1 die. You always get to roll 1 die no matter what the total is. And Daryl rolls a 1, that's a failure. We'll flip the card and find out what happens. And that card says, resolve the effect based on the number of test results. We have 0. You must focus your mind to maintain the magic. Discard this card unless you spend a focus. Well, Daryl doesn't have any focus, so that card will have to be discarded. That's unfortunate. And finally, Hank Sampson. He has 1 item that has a reckoning effect, and that's his Shroud of Shadow spell. It says test lore -1 and flip the card. Well, similar situation for Hank. He has a lore of 1, so he'll only be rolling 1 die for the test. He rolled a 4, so that's a failure. We'll find out what happens to that card. We'll flip it over. And with 0 successes, it says the darkness seeps into your mind. Gain 1 madness condition unless you discard this card. Well, I think rather than gaining that madness condition, we're just going to discard that spell. And the next step in the resolution is to spawn a gate. And that gate is going to be the gate in San Francisco. That's a green gate. So gate opens in San Francisco, and the monster that comes through the gate is a young Chthonian. Now that has a green ethereal symbol in the upper right hand corner, so we have to flip that token over and find out the special condition that that offers. And that says that when this monster is spawned, each investigator on this space or an adjacent space loses 1 health and 1 sanity. Okay, well luckily we have no one there or adjacent to San Francisco, so that'll have no effect. And now we'll return back to the card where we're going to read the event. And the card says, you believed you could harness the power of those mysterious treasures. You were wrong. Now they lie in ashes, consumed by their own strange energies. In the end, they were nothing more than fuel to hasten the coming catastrophe. It's called Shattered Magic event. Each investigator discards half of his magical possessions, then advance doom by 1 for each artifact discarded in this way. Ooh. Well, unfortunately, we had 2 such items. One was from Monterey Jack, that was his stone calendar, and the other was the cursed sphere that was Roland Banks. So we're going to have to discard 2 magical items, and that's going to move the doom track by 1 for each artifact. So that's going to slide the doom down from 11 down to 9. And that's going to conclude the turn. The only thing left now is to decide if we want to adjust our lead investigator token. And I think we'll leave it the way it is. Monterey Jack is in Bombay with Roland Banks, so he would be able to conduct a trade action with Roland, and that would be a way for him to acquire that clue token that he needs. Then he would travel using that uncharted path to the Himalayas, where he would spend the 4 clue tokens and get rid of that dastardly ongoing rumor, ghostly chanting. Now that does not require him to perform an action to do that. It just says that he spends the clue tokens equal to the number of investigators and the rumor is solved. So I think that's what we're going to do then. We'll leave it with Monterey Jack as the lead investigator. All right, we're going to begin our next turn. We'll start with the lead investigator. That's Monterey Jack. He's in Bombay, India. His first action is going to be a trade action. He's going to trade with Roland Banks. Monterey is going to gain the Mauser C96 from Roland Banks and a clue token. Roland Banks still has that axe that he picked up, so that will be his weapon of choice. And now Monterey Jack has a weapon, in addition to that bullwhip that he has. So that's good. We'll do that. That's the first action. And next, Monterey is going to conduct a travel action. He's going to move from Bombay using the uncharted path to reach the Himalayas. Monterey reaches the Himalayas, and he is going to spend 4 clues. That's the number of clues that are equal to the number of investigators, and he's going to solve the rumor, the ghostly chanting rumor. So he's going to spend his 4 clues, and that rumor token is gone. And that will conclude Monterey Jack's action phase. We'll move on to Roland Banks. Roland is in Bombay, and I think what I'm going to do is have Roland travel to Shanghai. He'll take the rail line from Bombay to Shanghai, and that would help to have another investigator there to combat that cultist in the event that Hank Sampson might have a problem or so with battling that cultist that's there. So we'll have him do a travel action to Shanghai. He reaches Shanghai, and I think what we'll do is we'll have Roland conduct a focus action. That'll get him an extra focus token, and he'll have 2 now. When you're in a space with a monster, you're not able to do certain actions, but the focus is not one of them. You're able to conduct a focus token even if there's a monster in your space. What you can't do, though, is acquire assets or rest. You can't do that when there's a monster there. Okay, we'll move on to Daryl Simmons. He is in Batavia, Dutch East Indies. And I think Daryl is going to use his component action, and we're going to look at the top 5 cards of the asset deck and put them back in order, and then we can discard any number of cards from the reserve. And those assets are an Arcane Assistant, Police Assistance, Otherworld Codex, Tome of Horrors, and Esteemed Author. So we can put those back in any order that we wish. Those aren't really very good cards that I would have wanted, but they are what they are. I think we'll put the Tome of Horrors on top, followed by the Otherworld Codex, and then the other cards will filter through to the back of that stack. We'll replace those, and then we'll go to the reserve and see if we can discard any of those cards. And I think we're going to discard the Treasure Hunter and the Lodge Disciple. Those are kind of expensive. Now, we can take a bank loan out. That automatically gives you 2 successes to the test result, but I try to avoid that if I can, because 9 times out of 10 that thing comes and bites me all the time. So I'm going to try to do it without having to take a bank loan out. So we'll get rid of the Treasure Hunter and the Lodge Disciple and replace those with 2 other cards to the reserve. And those cards are replaced with the Tome of Horrors and the Otherworld Codex. And I think for his second action, Daryl's going to do a focus action. That'll gain him a focus token, and that will conclude his action phase. We'll move on to Hank Sampson. And Hank Sampson is in Shanghai now. He's in a space with the Expedition and Occultists. So he's not wounded. He's at full capacity of health and sanity. So I think what we'll do is we'll have Hank use a component action on something called the Mythos Codex. And that says, as an action, you muster the courage to look upon the secrets of the universe. Test will. Okay, Sampson has a will of 3, but it's been degraded by 1. So he'll be rolling 2 dice for the test. And unfortunately, Hank failed. He rolled 2 4s. So it just says that if you pass, the pages contain knowledge of your mind. Knowledge your mind can hardly fathom. Flip the card. Well, we don't get to do that. So that's one of his actions. Hank's other action is also going to be a component action. You are able to take multiple component actions as long as they're not the same component. And we're going to use Hank Sampson's active special ability called action. It says Test Strength. If you pass, discard 1 monster on your space with toughness less than or equal to your test result. So we're going to have Hank do a test for strength. He has a strength of 4, but that's been degraded down to a 3, so he'll be rolling 3 dice. And unfortunately, Hank rolled 2 3s and a 2, so that is a fail. But we're going to use a focus token and have him re-roll one of the dice. His re-roll is a 6, and that's a success. So that will allow him to discard 1 monster on his space with toughness less than or equal to the result. So we're going to get rid of that cultist, and that will help us out, I think. The cultist is returned to the off-board stack of 6 cultists next to Yig's card. And that's going to complete Hank Sampson's action phase. We'll move on to the encounter phase. Our lead investigator is Monterey Jack, and he's going to conduct a location encounter at the Himalayas. That will be a general encounter in a wilderness space. And the card reads, you try to kick open the door of an abandoned shack. Test strength. Okay, Monterey Jack has a strength of 4, and that's modified down -1. It's impaired to 3. He has nothing else he can use. His weapons are only during combat encounters. So he'll be rolling 3 dice for the test. And unfortunately, Monterey failed. A 2, 3, and a 4. It says if you fail, the long night without shelter fills you with dread. Impair will. Okay, so that's going to move his will from a 2 down to a 1. That's unfortunate. I can't believe how many impairment tokens we've got on our characters. We've got a -2 on Daryl Simmons for his observation, a -1 for Hank Sampson to his strength and will. Same thing for Monterey Jack, a -1 for strength and will, and a -2 for Roland Banks on his observation. It's not good. Okay, we'll move on to Roland Banks. He's in Shanghai right now. And I think Roland is going to attempt a token encounter, and he's going to encounter the expedition. So we'll do an expedition encounter for Roland Banks. And the card reads, a wealthy antiquities dealer's safe was dropped into a deep river. Resolve the pass effect to open the safe under the water's surface, or resolve the fail effect to try to get the safe back on dry land. All right. And I think we're going to try the fail effect. So we're going to try to get the safe to dry land. And that reads, the safe is extremely heavy and difficult to recover. Test strength -1. Roland Banks has a strength of 2. It's been improved by 1. So he'll be rolling a total of 3 dice for the test. Roland has 1 success. He rolled a 5. So it says if you pass, you push it up onto a sidewalk and open it easily. Gain 1 artifact. All right, that's great. Let's see what artifact he gains. And he gains the item Crystal of the Elder Things. Mythos card text effects cannot cause you to lose health or sanity. Okay, that's a great item. We'll add that to Roland Banks's tableau, and then we'll move on to Daryl Simmons's encounter phase. And incidentally, the next expedition location is going to be Istanbul. We'll move that token to Istanbul. And now it is Daryl Simmons. He's still in Batavia, and he's going to undertake a location encounter, and that is a city location encounter, so that's the general location encounter. And that one reads, you attend night classes hoping to learn a new skill. Test lore. Okay, Daryl Simmons has a lore of 1 only, so he'll be rolling 1 die for the test. He does gain 1 for his passive ability, and that is while he's in a city, he gains an extra die, so he can roll 2 now. And unfortunately, old Daryl, he failed. He's got 2 3s. He does have a clue token and a focus token, so we could re-roll that. Let's see what the fail condition is. If you fail, the loss of sleep takes a toll on your stability, impair will. Well, I think we'll try to burn one of the focus tokens. So we'll burn a focus token and re-roll one of those 3s. And Daryl came through. He's got a 6, so we'll continue reading for the success. And it says here, if you pass, you muster the lessons and acquire insights into the occult world. Gain 1 talent condition and 1 clue. Okay, that's great. So we're going to give him a clue token and a talent. So we'll see what his talent is. And the talent is resilient. Once per round, when you would lose health, you may test strength. If you pass, prevent the loss of up to 2 health and then flip the card. All right, that's great. So we'll give that card to and the clue to Daryl Simmons. That gives him 2 clues now. And we'll move on to Hank Sampson. And Hank is in Shanghai. And I think what he'll do is we'll try the Shanghai encounter. So we're going to draw an Australia-Asia card, encounter card, and see what it is for Shanghai. And the card reads, in your dreams, the Duke of Zhao tests the tenacity of your spirit. You may spend 1 focus to improve lore and 1 other skill of your choice. If you do not spend the focus, he sends a living nightmare to punish you. Spawn 1 monster on your space and immediately encounter it. Well, fortunately, Hank Sampson has 1 focus token, so that's what we're going to do. He's going to spend the focus to improve lore and 1 other skill. That is great. So we'll have Hank spend that focus token, and he's going to improve lore. We'll get a lore improvement token. And he's also going to be able to improve 1 other skill, and I think we're going to have him improve his strength again, so that'll remove that detriment token, bring him back to 4, so that's great. And that's going to complete Hank Sampson's turn, and we'll move on to the Mythos phase. Now we know, based upon the stage 1, that this has to be a green card. So we'll reveal that card and see what it is. And that is a green card. It's listed as the Invisible Maze. We begin that step by advancing the Omen track. The Omen track is going to move from the blue star pattern to the red fire circle, I guess, and we do have one red gate open. So that is going to move our doom track down 1. That'll go from 9 down to 8. And the next is a monster surge. So what's going to happen there is resolve a monster surge on each space with a gate that corresponds to the current omen. If no gates correspond to the omen, spawn a gate. So we're going to have a monster surge occur at Sydney. Checking our icon reference card, for a monster surge we have to spawn 2 monsters, unfortunately. And those monsters are revealed to be a servitor of the outer gods and a skeleton. Okay, let's take a closer look at their capabilities. The servitor of the outer gods has a toughness of 3. You have to perform a will -1 check with a 3 sanity damage, horror damage, and then a strength test, and the damage is going to be equal to the number of gates on the game board that correspond to the current omen. Okay. And the skeleton is a standard sanity test with a horror value of 2, a strength -2 test with only 1 damage though, and it has a toughness of 2. If you defeat this monster during a combat encounter, recover sanity. Alright, so we'll place those monsters in Sydney. We have quite a collection of monsters that have accumulated in Sydney. We've got a thrall, servitor of the outer gods, and a skeleton. So, The next step is to spawn clues. So we'll be spawning 2 clues. And the clues are going to be in the pyramids and space 9, which is up in Greenland. Finally, it's the event, the invisible maze. Looking down one avenue, you see shops from the other side of the world. Looking down the other way, you see the back of your own head endlessly mirrored. Each turn you takes you somewhere strange, but you cannot discern the logic that governs these paths. Event. Each investigator rolls 1 die and resolves the corresponding effect. 1 or 2, we'd be delayed. A 3 to 5, we'd move to a random space. 6 would be no effect. Okay. We'll start that test with the lead investigator, that's Monterey Jack. He's in the Himalayas. He rolls a 3, and that means he moves to a random space. So we have to draw a clue token to find out where the random location is. And that is revealed to be space 8. That is a sea space in the Caribbean. So we're going to move Monterey Jack to space 8. Next is going to be Roland Banks. He's in Shanghai. Here's his roll. Rolls a 4, and that's going to be moving to a random space. Draw another clue token. That clue is revealed to be space 2, and that is the North Pacific area, I guess, somewhere maybe around Hawaii. It's a sea space. Next is our roll for Daryl Simmons. Daryl's in Batavia. Daryl rolls a 3, and he is going to be moved to a random space. And he's going to get moved to the Himalayas. And finally, we'll find out what happens to Hank Sampson. He's currently in Shanghai. And he rolls a 1, and that's going to make him delayed. A delayed investigator is placed in the prone position, and when an investigator becomes delayed, he tips his investigator token on its side to remember that he's delayed. Instead of performing actions during the action phase, he stands up his investigator token and is no longer delayed. Okay. And that's going to complete the Mythos phase, and I think we're going to end the video here. Thanks for joining me for this part 2 of our playthrough of Eldritch Horror against Yig, the Father of Serpents. Please join me again next time at the Solo Gamers Club, where we'll continue on with the playthrough. Thanks again, and have a good evening.